You know what -40 degrees feels like. It feels like your eyelashes freezing together when you blink. Like your rifle becoming so cold that touching the metal with bare skin will rip your flesh clean off. Like watching your best friend's fingers turn black from frostbite while Chinese soldiers are charging at you across a frozen reservoir. I'm 73 years old now. I've got grandkids who think Call of Duty is realistic. They have no idea. The Korean War, the forgotten war, they call it. Sandwiched between World War II and Vietnam like it didn't matter. Like 50,000 American boys didn't die in that frozen hellscape. Like the screams don't still wake me up some nights. But I remember. God help me, I remember everything. My name is James Mitchell. I was 19 years old when I stepped off that transport ship in Busan, Korea, in September of 1950. I thought I was a man. I thought I knew what war was from the stories my old man told about the Pacific. I didn't know a damn thing. This is my story. The real story. Not the sanitized version you read in history books. This is what it was actually like to fight in the Korean War. The fear, the cold, the blood, the brotherhood. And I'm telling you now because those of us who were there are dying off. Every day, fewer of us are left to tell the truth. So buckle up. This isn't going to be comfortable. War never is. Summer of 1950. I was working at my dad's hardware store in Des Moines, Iowa, dating a girl named Betty who had blonde hair and a smile that could stop traffic. We were talking about getting married, maybe saving up for a little house on the west side. Then June 25th happened. North Korea invaded South Korea, came pouring across the 38th parallel with Soviet tanks and thousands of troops. The news made it sound like the dominoes were falling, like communism was going to take over the whole damn world if we didn't stop it right there. I remember President Truman's speech. Remember the newsreels at the theater. Remember the way everyone talked about our duty and stopping the spread of communism. I enlisted on July 3rd. Didn't wait to be drafted. Betty cried. My mother cried. My father shook my hand and told me he was proud, but I could see the fear in his eyes. He knew what I was walking into, even if I didn't. Basic training at Fort Benning, Georgia was tough, but nothing compared to what was coming. They taught us how to shoot, how to march, how to follow orders. They didn't teach us how to sleep in a foxhole while your feet were literally freezing inside your boots. They didn't teach us what a human body looks like when it's been dead for 3 days in sub-zero temperatures. Some things you can only learn by living through them. By September, I was assigned to the 7th Infantry Division. We shipped out from San Francisco on a rust bucket of a transport ship. Most of us had never been on the ocean before. Half the guys were seasick for the entire voyage. I stood on deck one night, looking at the stars, thinking about Betty. Wondering if I'd ever see Iowa again. Wondering if this was all a huge mistake. But you don't think like that for long in the military. You can't. So I pushed those thoughts down deep and focused on what was in front of me. Korea was in front of me. And Korea was about to change me forever. The smell hit us before we even saw land. Busan Harbor in September 1950 smelled like diesel fuel, fish, human waste, and something else I couldn't quite identify. Death, maybe. Desperation. The whole city was overflowing with refugees fleeing south, away from the North Korean advance. We marched down that gangplank carrying full packs, rifles, and the kind of naive confidence that only comes from never having been shot at. The heat was oppressive, humid. Nothing like the cold that would come later. Korea itself was beautiful in a way I hadn't expected. Rice paddies, mountains covered in trees, little villages with houses that had curved roofs. But the war had torn through it like a tornado. Burned out buildings, cratered roads, civilians with that hollow look in their eyes that comes from seeing too much. Our first night on Korean soil, we slept in a staging area outside Busan. I couldn't sleep. None of us could. You could hear artillery in the distance, a constant rumble like a thunderstorm that never ended. A sergeant named DeMarco, a veteran of World War II, walked through our tent that night. He was older, maybe 30, which seemed ancient to us. "Any of you boys ever kill a man?" he asked. Silence. Didn't think so. He lit a cigarette. "Here's what you need to know. When it happens, don't think, just do. Your training will kick in, and stay close to your buddies. The man next to you is the only thing that's going to keep you alive." He wasn't wrong. We moved north the next day in a convoy of trucks. The Incheon landing had just happened, MacArthur's brilliant amphibious assault that turned the whole war round. The North Koreans were retreating. We were advancing. Everything seemed to be going our way, young and stupid. That's what we were. The countryside rolled past. We saw South Korean soldiers, exhausted and ragged. We saw more refugees, entire families walking south with everything they owned on their backs. Old women, children, babies. I remember one little girl, couldn't have been more than 5, standing by the road. She waved at our truck as we passed. I waved back. Later, I would think about her a lot. Wonder if she survived. Wonder what happened to all those people whose country became a battlefield. Our first real taste of combat came 3 days later, just south of Seoul. We were advancing through a village when someone opened fire. I don't even know if it was North Koreans or just guerrillas left behind. Doesn't matter. Bullets started cracking past us, and suddenly everyone was screaming and diving for cover. I hit the ground behind a low stone wall, my heart hammering so hard I thought it would burst out of my chest. The guy next to me was a kid from Texas named Bobby Hernandez. He was praying in Spanish over and over, clutching his rifle. The firefight lasted maybe 10 minutes. Felt like 10 hours. When it was over, 2 of our guys were wounded. One North Korean soldier was dead in a ditch. I never even fired my weapon. Just stayed behind that wall, shaking. That night, Sergeant DeMarco found me. "You did fine, Mitchell," he said. "I didn't do anything," I said. "I just hid." "You stayed alive. That's doing something." He lit another cigarette. "Next time will be easier. It always is." He was right about that, too. By the time we reached Seoul, I'd been in 3 more firefights. I'd fired my rifle. I'd seen men die. I'd learned to move when bullets were flying, to find cover, to work with my squad. I'd learned what war actually was, and we hadn't even gotten to the worst part yet. Seoul was a mess. The city had changed hands multiple times in just a few months. Buildings were destroyed. Bodies were still in the streets. The civilians who remained looked at us with a mixture of hope and suspicion, like they couldn't believe we were really there to help. But we didn't stay long. MacArthur wanted to push north all the way to the Chinese border. End the war by Christmas. That was the plan. Reunify Korea under a democratic government. Send us all home as heroes. You know what they say about plans. October 1950. We crossed the 38th parallel into North Korea. I remember the moment clearly. Someone had spray-painted a sign. "You are now crossing the 38th parallel by courtesy of the 7th Infantry Division." We cheered, took pictures, acted like we'd already won. The North Korean army was in full retreat. We were chasing them up the peninsula, liberating towns, accepting surrenders. Everything seemed almost too easy. The weather was starting to turn. Mornings were crisp. You could see your breath. But it was beautiful country up there. Mountains covered in fall colors. Streams so clear you could see every stone on the bottom. I wrote letters to Betty. Told her I'd be home soon. Told her we should set a date for the wedding. Told her I loved her. I still have those letters. She saved everyone. By November, we were approaching the Yalu River, the border between North Korea and China. The war seemed basically over. The North Korean army was shattered. We were talking about what we'd do when we got home, where we'd go to college on the GI Bill, what jobs we'd get. Then the Chinese attacked. November 27th, 1950. The temperature had dropped to well below 0. We were positioned near the Chosin Reservoir, a massive frozen lake in the mountains of North Korea. Our division was spread out, covering a huge area. The Chinese had been infiltrating across the border for weeks, hundreds of thousands of them, and we had no idea. That night they hit us with everything they had. I was in my sleeping bag in a tent when the bugles started. If you've never heard Chinese military bugles in the middle of the night, you can't imagine how terrifying that sound is. High-pitched, warbling, coming from all around you in the darkness. Then the mortars started falling, then the screaming. I grabbed my rifle and stumbled out of the tent into absolute chaos. Tracers were flying everywhere. Explosions were lighting up the night. Chinese soldiers were already inside our perimeter, fighting hand-to-hand with our guys. Bobby Hernandez was right next to me. We fired at shapes in the darkness. You couldn't tell who was who. You just shot at anything that moved and wasn't wearing an American uniform. A Chinese soldier came out of nowhere, bayonet fixed, screaming. Bobby shot him. The man fell at my feet so close I could have touched him. The fighting lasted all night, wave after wave of Chinese troops. They just kept coming. For every one we killed, 2 more appeared. When dawn finally came, we could see what we were up against. There were bodies everywhere, Chinese bodies, American bodies. The snow was red with blood, and in the distance, on every hillside, we could see more Chinese troops, thousands of them, tens of thousands. We were surrounded. Welcome to the Chosin Reservoir. Welcome to the worst battle of the Korean War. Welcome to frozen hell. You want to know what cold really is? 40 below zero. Wind chill making it feel like 60 below. So cold that morphine syrettes froze solid and were useless for wounded men. So cold that plasma bottles shattered. So cold that men's feet froze inside their boots and had to be amputated later. So cold that the dead froze solid in whatever position they died in, and we stacked them like cordwood because we couldn't dig graves in the frozen ground. That was Chosin. The Chinese had us surrounded. The 7th Infantry Division, along with the Marines at the reservoir, were cut off from the rest of the UN forces. 12,000 men surrounded by 120,000 Chinese troops. The plan was simple. Fight our way south, break through the Chinese roadblocks, get to the port of Hungnam and evacuate. Sounds simple, right? It was 13 miles through mountain passes controlled by the enemy. 13 miles in the worst weather imaginable. 13 miles of constant combat. Sergeant DeMarco gathered our squad that first morning. "We're not retreating," he said. "We're attacking in a different direction. You understand? We move together. We fight together. Nobody gets left behind." Nobody gets left behind. That became our motto, our religion. The breakout started on December 1st. We loaded the wounded onto trucks and began the march south. Every mile, the Chinese were waiting, dug into the hillsides, setting up ambushes, trying to cut the column in half. I saw things during that march that I still can't quite believe happened. I saw a Marine captain standing on top of a tank, directing fire, completely exposed to enemy bullets, like he was invincible. I saw a medic run into open ground under fire to drag a wounded man to safety. Saw him get shot and keep going anyway. I saw Bobby Hernandez take a bullet through the shoulder and refuse to get on a truck. "I can still shoot," he said. And he did, one-handed, for the next 3 miles. I saw acts of courage that should have won medals, but nobody even recorded because everyone was doing the impossible. And I saw death. So much death. Men shot. Men frozen. Men who just sat down in the snow and never got up again because they'd given up. Because sometimes in war, your mind breaks before your body does. We fought during the day. We fought at night. The Chinese would blow bugles and attack in human waves, and we'd mow them down, and they'd keep coming. I don't know how many men I killed during that march. I stopped counting, stopped thinking about it. You become a machine. Load, aim, fire. Load, aim, fire. The nights were the worst. Imagine trying to sleep when it's 40 below zero, when you have to keep your rifle inside your sleeping bag so it doesn't freeze. When you wake up every hour to make sure your feet aren't frozen. When the sound of Chinese bugles could come at any moment. We took turns on watch. 2 hours on, 2 hours trying to sleep. You never really slept, though. Just kind of faded in and out of consciousness. One night, I was on watch with a guy named Tommy Chen, a Chinese-American kid from San Francisco. The irony wasn't lost on either of us, him shooting at Chinese soldiers. "You ever think about what you're going to do after this?" he asked me. "Marry my girl," I said. "Get a normal job. Try to forget this ever happened." He laughed. "Good luck with that last part." Tommy died 3 days later, took shrapnel from a mortar, died in Bobby's arms, asking for his mother. He was 20 years old. The cold was actually an enemy just as much as the Chinese. We had casualties from frostbite that exceeded our combat casualties. Guys would take off their boots and their toes would come off with their socks. Fingers turned black and fell off. One kid tried to take a drink from his canteen and the water was frozen solid. He threw the canteen down in frustration and it shattered like glass. We learned tricks. Keep moving. Never sit down for long. Share body heat when you could. Rotate positions so the guys in the center of the formation got a break from the wind. But mainly, we just endured. Day after day, mile after mile, firefight after firefight. Sergeant DeMarco was everywhere, checking on his men, making sure nobody fell behind, taking his turn on point. He seemed indestructible. On December 8th, we were ambushing a Chinese roadblock when he took a bullet to the chest. I was right there when it happened. Saw the impact. Saw him go down. Bobby and I dragged him behind a truck. The medic came running, but we could all see it was bad. The bullet had hit him right below his armor. He was coughing blood. Get the men through," he said to Bobby, who was now the senior guy in our squad. "We're getting you out, Sarge," Bobby said. DeMarco grabbed his arm. Don't leave anyone behind." He died 2 minutes later. We put him in one of the trucks with the other dead. Kept moving, because that's what he would have wanted. That's what war is, by the way. Not glory, not honor. Just keep moving. Keep fighting. Try to stay alive one more day. After DeMarco died, something changed in us. We got harder, colder, not just from the weather. Bobby took over the squad. He was only 20, but he'd grown up fast. We all had. The guys who left Busan in September were gone. In their place were these hollow-eyed, frost-bitten, half-frozen soldiers who could kill without thinking and march 20 miles on frozen feet. December 9th. We reached a place called Hellfire Valley, aptly named. The Chinese had set up machine gun nests on both sides of the road. We had to fight through. There was no other way. I remember Bobby giving us the plan, simple and brutal. Fix bayonets, get on the trucks, and charge straight through. The trucks would give us some cover. We'd fire at the hillsides. Hope we made it. "This is going to suck," he said. "But we're not dying here. You understand? We're not giving these bastards the satisfaction." We mounted up. I was on a truck bed with 7 other guys. We all knew at least some of us wouldn't make it to the other side. The trucks started rolling. Immediately, the Chinese opened up. Bullets were pinging off the truck, smashing through the wooden sides. One guy next to me took a round in the helmet. It ricocheted off, and he just looked stunned. We fired back, just shooting at muzzle flashes on the hillsides. Couldn't even tell if we were hitting anything. The truck in front of us took a direct hit from something, probably a recoilless rifle. It exploded. Burning men jumped off, rolling in the snow. Our driver floored it. We were doing maybe 40 miles an hour through this kill zone, which feels like warp speed when people are shooting at you. And then we were through. We'd lost 2 trucks, maybe 20 men, but we'd made it. Nobody cheered. We were too tired, too numb. We just reloaded and kept going. That night we stopped in a village to rest, or what was left of a village. The buildings were mostly rubble. The civilians were long gone. We found a partially intact building and crowded inside, trying to get out of the wind. Someone got a small fire going, though we were paranoid about the smoke giving away our position. Bobby sat next to me, staring at nothing. "You okay?" I asked. "I keep thinking about DeMarco," he said. "He survived the whole damn war in the Pacific. Tarawa, Saipan, Iwo Jima, and he dies here in this frozen shithole that nobody even knows about." "People will know," I said. "Eventually." He laughed bitterly. "You really believe that?" I didn't answer, because honestly, I didn't know. We sat in silence for a while, listening to the wind howl outside. "When we get out of this," Bobby said, "I'm going to find DeMarco's family. Tell them what happened. Tell them he died getting his men out." "We all will," I said. And we did. Years later, a group of us went to Brooklyn and met DeMarco's widow and his 2 kids, told them their husband and father was a hero, gave them his dog tags that we'd saved. But that was later. In that moment, in that frozen village, we just tried to stay warm and stay alive. The thing about combat that nobody tells you is how close you get to the guys in your unit. Closer than family. Closer than anything. You know each other's fears, each other's dreams. You know who's got a girl back home and who doesn't. Who's brave and who's just pretending. Who you can count on when everything goes to hell. My squad became my entire world. There was Bobby, of course, our squad leader. Tough as nails on the outside, but he cried in his sleep sometimes. I never told anyone. There was Mickey O'Brien from Boston. Big Irish kid who was always cracking jokes even when we were freezing to death. He once made us laugh during a mortar barrage by doing an impression of our battalion commander. Almost got court-martialed for it later, but it was worth it. There was Jerome J.J. Jackson from Alabama. First black guy I ever really knew, which tells you something about how segregated Iowa was. J.J. was the best shot in the company. Could hit anything with a rifle. Quiet guy, kept to himself, but absolutely lethal when the shooting started. There was Danny Kim, Korean-American from L.A. He could speak some Korean, which made him invaluable. Also saved our asses more than once by talking to civilians and finding out where the Chinese were positioned. And there was Charlie Kowalski from Chicago. Youngest guy in the squad, only 18, looked about 15. We called him Babyface. He was terrified all the time, but never let it stop him from doing his job. These guys were my brothers. We shared everything: food, cigarettes, heat, stories about home. On December 10th, we were dug in on a hillside, waiting for another Chinese attack that we knew was coming. Mickey was telling us about his girlfriend back in Boston. "She writes me every week," he said. "Every single week. Letters full of news about her job, her family, what movies she's seen. Makes it feel like home's not so far away." "What's her name?" Charlie asked. "Kathleen," Mickey said, and his whole face softened when he said it. "Kathleen Mary O'Brien. We're going to get married when I get back. Gonna have a big Irish wedding with 100 relatives and enough whiskey to float a boat." "You better make it back, then," JJ said quietly. "Oh, I'm making it back," Mickey said. "I didn't survive Hellfire Valley to die on some other frozen hill. But you don't get to choose that in war. You don't get to decide if you live or die based on how much you want to go home." The attack came at dusk, Chinese troops swarming up the hillside, firing as they came. We held them off for 2 hours, firing until our barrels were hot enough to burn skin, throwing grenades, fighting hand-to-hand when they got close enough. Mickey was right next to me, firing his M1 in controlled bursts, calm as if he was at target practice. Then he just stopped. I looked over. He was staring down at his chest, where a dark stain was spreading across his jacket. "Mickey!" I grabbed him as he fell. The bullet had hit him just below the collarbone. He was coughing blood. "Get the medic!" I screamed. But the medic was 50 yards away, dealing with 3 other wounded guys. I pressed my hands on the wound, trying to stop the bleeding. Mickey's eyes were wide, scared. "It's okay," I lied. You're going to be fine. You're going to get back to Kathleen. Tell her, he said, his voice wet and bubbling. Tell her I love her. Tell her I tried. You tell her yourself, I said. You're not dying here. But he was. Mickey O'Brien died on that hillside in my arms, his blood soaking into my gloves, his last breath a whisper of a name I could barely hear. Kathleen. We didn't have time to grieve. The Chinese were still coming. We had to keep fighting. JJ dragged Mickey's body behind our line. We'd carry him down with us when we pulled back. Nobody gets left behind. But part of me died with Mickey that day. Part of all of us did. That's what war takes from you. Not just your friends, not just your innocence. It takes pieces of your soul, bit by bit, until you're not sure there's anything left. December 12th, 1950. We were almost out. Almost to Hungnam. Almost to the ships that would take us away from this frozen nightmare. But the Chinese weren't done with us yet. They'd set up one last roadblock between us and freedom, dug into the hills overlooking the road. Mortars, machine guns, probably a few thousand troops. Our colonel called it the gauntlet. Every unit had to run it, move as fast as possible, take casualties, keep going. Our turn came at dawn. Bobby gathered us together. The squad was down to 7 guys now. Started with 12, lost DeMarco, lost Mickey, lost 2 others in skirmishes I haven't even mentioned because there were too many to count. This is it, Bobby said. One more push and we're out. We move fast, we stick together, and we remember who we're doing this for. He didn't have to say more. We all knew. For DeMarco, for Mickey, for Tommy Chen and every other guy who didn't make it this far. We mounted the trucks. The column started moving, and all hell broke loose. The Chinese had the road zeroed in. Mortar shells were landing among the vehicles. Machine gun fire was constant. You could actually see tracers crossing in front of the trucks like deadly ribbons. Our truck took a hit to the engine. It coughed, sputtered, started losing speed. Off, off, Bobby yelled. We bailed off the back and hit the ground running. We had to keep up with the column or we'd be left behind in Chinese territory. I ran harder than I've ever run in my life. Full pack. Rifle. Frozen feet. Didn't matter. You find strength you didn't know you had when death is chasing you. Charlie was in front of me. I saw him stumble, get up, keep running. JJ was laying down covering fire, shooting at the hillside while running backward. I don't know how he did it. Danny was translating something a wounded Korean soldier was screaming, trying to help even while running for his life. We ran for a mile, maybe more, until the Chinese fire faded behind us, until we reached the marine perimeter around Hungnam, until we were safe. We collapsed on the ground, gasping for air. I actually threw up from the exertion and the relief. "Everyone here?" Bobby panted. "Sound off." One by one we called out our names. Mitchell, Bobby, JJ, Danny, Charlie. 5 guys left from a squad of 12. But we'd made it. We'd survived the Chosin Reservoir. Hungnam was chaos. Thousands of soldiers streaming in from the mountains. Wounded men everywhere. Equipment being loaded onto ships. And civilians. Tens of thousands of North Korean civilians who'd fled south with us, terrified of what the Chinese and North Koreans would do to them for helping the Americans. The Navy had brought in everything that could float. Destroyers, cargo ships, LSTs, even merchant marine vessels. Our orders were simple. Get on a ship. Any ship. But first, there was the matter of the dead. Remember what I said about nobody gets left behind? We meant it. Every unit brought their dead to a collection point. Hundreds of bodies, thousands, all frozen solid. I helped carry Mickey. Bobby and I carried him together, laid him with the others. Someone had tagged him with his name and serial number. "We should say something," I said. Bobby just shook his head. "What's there to say? He's dead. We're not. That's war." But I could see tears freezing on his face. We said goodbye to Mickey O'Brien there, to Tommy Chen, to Sergeant DeMarco, to all the guys we'd fought with and lost. Then we walked away. Because the living still had to keep living. The Navy loaded us onto a transport ship on December 15th. As we pulled away from the dock, I stood at the rail and watched Hongnam disappear. Behind us, demolition charges were destroying the port so the Chinese couldn't use it. Massive explosions sent up columns of smoke and fire. "Hell of a thing," JJ said, standing next to me. "Which part?" I asked. "All of it." He lit a cigarette. "We went all the way to the Chinese border, almost won the whole war, then had to fight our way back to where we started." "For what?" I didn't have an answer. The war would continue for 2 more years, but for us, for the survivors of Chosin, the worst was over. On that ship sailing south, I finally let myself believe I might actually see home again. I got home to Iowa in March of 1951. They gave us a parade, shook our hands, called us heroes. A local newspaper ran a story, "Local boy survives Korean War." Betty met me at the train station. She looked just like I remembered, beautiful, smiling, crying. We got married in May, had that life we'd planned, house on the west side, kids, grandkids eventually. But here's what nobody tells you about coming home from war. You never really leave. I'd wake up screaming. Betty would hold me while I shook, drenched in sweat, mumbling about Chinese soldiers and frozen bodies. I couldn't handle loud noises. Fireworks on the 4th of July sent me into panic attacks. I couldn't throw anything away. Became a borderline hoarder because I remembered what it was like to have nothing. I couldn't sit with my back to a door. Had to see all the exits. Even now, they call it PTSD now. Back then, they didn't call it anything. You were just supposed to man up and deal with it. So I did. For decades, I didn't talk about Korea. Not to Betty, not to my kids, not to anyone except the guys who were there. Bobby and I stayed in touch. He became a teacher in Houston. Never married. Said he couldn't get close to anyone after losing so many people. JJ went to college on the GI Bill, became an engineer. We'd talk on the phone once a year, usually around the anniversary of the breakout from Chosin. Danny moved back to LA, took over his family's restaurant. Died of a heart attack in 1987, only 60 years old. Charlie, babyface, had the hardest time. Couldn't hold a job, drank too much, ended up homeless for a while. I sent him money when I could. He died in 2003. Suicide. The war killed him just as surely as it killed Mickey and DeMarco. Just took longer. For decades, we were forgotten. The Korean War was the forgotten war. Vietnam happened and everyone paid attention to that. World War II got all the glory. We were just the guys who fought in between. But we remembered. God, we remembered. Every detail, every face, every scream, every frozen morning, every friend we lost. I'm 73 now, as I said. I've lived a good life in many ways. Got to see my kids grow up. Got to meet my grandchildren. Got to grow old with a woman I loved. But there's not a day that goes by that I don't think about Korea. About that frozen reservoir. About the march. About the men who didn't make it home. So what did I learn from all of this? What wisdom can I pass on? First, war is hell. I know that's a cliche, but it's true. Anyone who tells you otherwise is lying or trying to sell you something. War is cold and terrifying and brutal. It takes the best people and chews them up. Second, the men and women who serve deserve better than to be forgotten. They deserve our respect, our support, and our memory. Not parades and platitudes, but real help. Real acknowledgement of what they sacrificed. Third, the bonds you form in combat are real. They last. Bobby and I are still friends 70 years later. We talk every week. He's the only person who truly understands what I went through. Fourth, trauma is real. It doesn't make you weak to struggle after combat. It makes you human. If I could go back and tell my 20-year-old self anything, it would be that it's okay to ask for help. Fifth, life is precious. Every day above ground is a gift. I learned that watching men die at 19 and 20 years old. They never got to grow up, fall in love, have kids, see the world. I got to do all those things, so I try not to waste a single day. And finally, tell your story. That's why I'm doing this now. The Korean War is slipping from memory. Soon, all of us who were there will be gone. But the story needs to be remembered. Not because war's glorious. It's not, but because it happened. Because men died. Because it mattered. In 2015, I went to my last Chosin Few reunion. That's what we call ourselves. The Chosin Few. The men who fought at the Chosin Reservoir and lived to tell about it. Used to be hundreds of us at these reunions. Then dozens. By 2015, there were maybe 20 of us left. Bobby was there, 85 years old, using a walker, but still sharp as a tack. We sat together in the hotel bar, two old men drinking terrible coffee and talking about friends who'd been dead for 65 years. "You remember Hellfire Valley?" Bobby asked. "Every day," I said. "You remember what DeMarco said? Nobody gets left behind?" "I remember." Bobby was quiet for a moment. Then, "We kept that promise. We got everyone out. Dead or alive, we got them out." "We did," I agreed. "I'm proud of that," he said. "In a war full of things I'm not proud of, I'm proud of that." We sat in silence for a while. "You ever regret it?" I asked. "Enlisting?" Bobby thought about it. "Yes and no. I regret the things I had to do, the things I saw, but I don't regret serving with you guys, with DeMarco and Mickey and all the others. They were the best men I ever knew." I raised my coffee cup. "To the Chosin Few." Bobby raised his. "To the frozen Chosin." We drank. That was the last time I saw Bobby in person. He died 6 months later. Heart failure. Now I'm one of the last ones left. There are maybe a handful of Chosin veterans still alive. Soon there will be none. And then the only record of what we did will be in history books and recordings like this. My grandson asked me once why I never talked about the war. I told him that some things are too hard to put into words. Some experiences are so intense, so traumatic, that talking about them feels like diminishing them. But I was wrong. Silence doesn't honor the dead. Remembering does. Telling the story does. So I'm telling it now, even though it's hard. Even though it brings back nightmares I've spent 70 years trying to forget. I'm telling it for DeMarco, who died leading his men to safety. For Mickey, who just wanted to get back to Kathleen. For Tommy Chen, who called for his mother with his last breath. For Charlie Kowalski, who survived the war but couldn't survive the peace. For all the guys who never got to grow old, who never got to tell their own stories, I'm telling it so you'll know, so you'll understand, so you'll remember. The Korean War wasn't some footnote between bigger conflicts. It was real. We were real. The men who died were real. We fought in conditions you can't imagine, against an enemy that outnumbered us 10 to 1, in cold that could kill you as surely as a bullet. And we survived. Not all of us, not most of us, but some of us. And we came home to a country that had already moved on. To a war that people wanted to forget, but we couldn't forget. We never forgot. Every Thanksgiving I think about the Chosin Reservoir. Because Thanksgiving 1950 was when the Chinese attacked, when our world turned into frozen hell. Every Christmas I think about the march, because we were fighting our way to Hungnam in mid-December, while people back home were putting up decorations and singing carols. Every 4th of July when the fireworks start, I'm back there, hearing mortars, seeing tracers, smelling gunpowder and death. You never really leave the war. It lives inside you forever. People thank me for my service sometimes. I appreciate it, I do. But I'm never quite sure what to say back, because I didn't do it for thanks. None of us did. We did it because our country called and we answered. We did it because we believed in something bigger than ourselves. We did it because the guy next to us was doing it and we couldn't let him down. Service isn't about glory. It's not about medals or parades or having schools named after you. It's about showing up, doing your job, taking care of your buddies, putting something else ahead of your own comfort and safety. That's what DeMarco did when he ran out under fire to direct his men. That's what the medics did when they treated wounded men while bullets were flying. That's what every guy in my squad did, every single day, in conditions that would have broken most people. We weren't special. We weren't superheroes. We were just kids who got thrown into an impossible situation and did our best to survive. Some of us made it. Some of us didn't. But we all served. We all did our part, and I'm proud of that, even with all the nightmares, even with all the trauma, even with everything I lost. I'm proud that when my country needed me, I stepped up. I just wish more people knew what we went through to do it. Korea is a prosperous democracy now. South Korea, I mean. The country we fought to defend. They've got technology companies, car manufacturers, one of the strongest economies in Asia. K-pop and Korean dramas are popular worldwide. My granddaughter is obsessed with BTS. She has no idea that 70 years ago I was freezing to death trying to keep her beloved Korea free. Sometimes I watch the news and see Seoul, modern, vibrant, full of life. And I think about what it looked like in 1950. Bombed out, burning, bodies in the streets. We did that. The Chosin Few and everyone else who fought in Korea. We gave them the chance to become what they are today. Was it worth it? I don't know. That's an impossible question. Was it worth Mickey's life? Tommy's? DeMarco's? All the others? They can't answer. They're dead. But South Korea is free. 50 million people live in freedom instead of under the nightmare that is North Korea. So, maybe it was worth it. I just wish we'd been able to finish the job. Wish we could have unified the whole peninsula. Wish the war hadn't dragged on for 2 more years after Chosin. But we did what we could with what we had. And that has to be enough. If you're watching this and you're young, I want to tell you something. The freedom you enjoy didn't come free. It was paid for in blood, in sacrifice, in young men and women who never got to grow old. I'm not saying this to make you feel guilty. I'm saying it so you'll remember. Remember that someone fought for your right to speak freely, to vote, to live in peace. Remember that someone shivered in a frozen foxhole so you could sleep safely in a warm bed. Remember that someone watched their friends die so you could have a future. Don't waste it. Don't take it for granted. Live a life worthy of their sacrifice. Be kind. Be brave. Stand up for what's right. Take care of each other. That's what we tried to do at Chosin. Take care of each other. Nobody gets left behind. That should be true in peace too. Don't leave people behind. Don't forget those who served. Don't ignore veterans who are struggling. And if your country calls you to serve, think hard about it. War isn't what you see in movies. It's not glorious. It's not an adventure. But sometimes it's necessary. And if you do serve, remember, your brothers and sisters in arms are what will get you through. Take care of them, trust them, fight for them, because in the end, that's what it's all about. Not flags or politics or ideology. It's about the person next to you in the foxhole, the person who will risk their life to save yours. That's what I learned at the Chosin Reservoir. That's what I want you to remember. It's been 73 years since I stepped off that ship in Busan. 73 years since I was a 19-year-old kid who thought he knew what war was. A lifetime ago, and yesterday. The nightmares have faded some. Not completely. Never completely. But I've learned to live with them. I've had a good life. Better than I deserved, maybe. Better than Mickey or DeMarco or any of the others got to have. I think about them often. Wonder what they would have done with their lives if they'd survived. What they would have become. I think Mickey would have been a good father. He talked about kids all the time. I think DeMarco would have stayed in the army, become a sergeant major, trained the next generation. I think Tommy would have become a doctor. He was always the one taking care of people. But I'll never know. Because they died at 19 and 20 and 22 years old. In a war most people have forgotten. In a frozen hell called the Chosin Reservoir. I'm telling their story because they can't. I'm remembering because someone has to. And soon, when I'm gone, I hope you'll remember too. Remember the frozen Chosin. Remember the men who fought there. Remember that freedom isn't free. My name is James Mitchell. I was a soldier in the Korean War. I survived the Chosin Reservoir. This is my story. Don't forget it. If this story meant something to you, I want to ask you to do something. First, hit that like button and subscribe to this channel. More veteran stories need to be told, and your support makes that possible. Second, share this video. Share it with your friends, your family, your history teachers. The Korean War is fading from memory. Don't let it disappear completely. Third, if you know a Korean War veteran, thank them. Better yet, ask them to tell their story. Record it, preserve it, because soon we'll all be gone. Fourth, support veterans organizations. The VFW, the American Legion, the Chosin Few. These groups do important work helping veterans and preserving military history. And finally, leave a comment. Tell me what you think. Ask questions. Share your own family stories. Let's keep this conversation going. War is hell, but remembering those who fought is our duty. To all the Chosin Few who didn't make it home, you're not forgotten. Not by me, not by us. Semper Fi. And for those who served in the army like me, this we'll defend. Thank you for watching. Thank you for remembering.